In Indiana's 24th district, change doesn't arrive all at once. Shows up in new neighborhoods, rising beside cornfields, in schools growing faster than budgets, and in families trying to keep pace with a community that's evolving in real time. Tonight's guest is not a lifelong politician. She's a business leader, volunteer, mother of two, someone who moved to Westfield looking for strong schools, safe neighborhoods, and the promise so many Hoosier families chase. Since arriving, she's worked with local nonprofits, food banks, and community programs while building a career and raising a family in one of Indiana's fastest changing regions. Now she's stepping into the political arena, running for the Indiana House to represent Westfield, Sheridan, and surrounding communities, with a campaign focused on working families, sustainability, smart growth, and fiscal transparency. In a district currently represented by a Republican incumbent elected just in 24, the question isn't just who she is, it's whether District 24 is ready for a different voice in the State House. Good evening and welcome back to Hold 'em Accountable, where we cut through the noise, follow the facts, and keep the focus on the people of Indiana. Tonight's guest is Racheal Bleicher, the Democratic candidate for Indiana House District 24. Racheal is a corporate leader, community volunteer, and mother of two, who has lived in Westfield since 2020 and worked with organizations like Gleaner's Food Bank, the Indiana Diaper Bank, and Changing Footprints. Her campaign centers on supporting working families, protecting personal freedoms, strengthening schools, and guiding responsible growth in a district experiencing rapid change. She's challenging the current Republican incumbent in what could become one of the more closely watched suburban races in Indiana. Racheal, welcome to Hold 'em Accountable.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that incredible introduction.
District 24 is experiencing rapid population growth and development. How would you balance new housing and business expansion with preserving community character?
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing, right? I think we definitely need to move from a reactive approach to just responding as we get those developer requests to a more proactive approach, setting standards in our communities before we allow building to begin. I do think that developers and corporations should be responsible for the cost of strain on our roads and sewers, and there should be definitely a focus on more underutilized land or vacant lots instead of building new. I live in Westfield where there's currently a car wash like every 2 miles. So I would love to focus on more small business development and creating that small town feel where we have those boutique shops or great restaurants, and we're also supporting local community members to do that. Habitat and farm development is also super important to me as we are in Indiana. And I'd like to also look at workforce housing to entice people to come to Indiana and build their life here, whether it's in a career transition or for students coming out of college. I don't want to lose those students out of state because we don't have a place for them here.
Families move to Westfield and surrounding areas largely for strong public schools. What specific policies would you support to ensure schools remain fully funded as enrollment grows?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, my husband and I moved here in 2020, and we selected Westfield and Hamilton County because it's great communities and great schools. I think my first priority would be looking at SCA 1 reform, keeping public tax dollars in public schools out of the voucher system where we have no eyes on how those dollars are being used. We have no voice on how those dollars are being used. And I do still think it goes back to housing. We don't have enough inventory right now to support young families with children. So not only do we lose out on those tax dollars in our communities, but we lose out on that future kind of inventory is a funny way to talk about children, but we are missing out on those future students because they can't afford to come to our community. So I think it's a combo of keeping our tax dollars in the public schools to make sure that every child has access to an education, and then also making sure that we have the housing to support those young families.
Many working parents in Hamilton County face childcare affordability challenges. What role should the state play in expanding access to affordable childcare?
So this one is super personal to me as I have two children currently in childcare, and I spend 50% more than my mortgage on childcare. And I'm fortunate to be able to do so. I know that is not the case for a lot of people. I believe that childcare is a part of infrastructure in a community. um, by providing, and the state should invest in it accordingly. When families have childcare, we give parents the opportunity to participate in the workforce. We increase tax revenue. And there is data that shows that for every $1 invested into childcare, you get $3 back in your community. That is fiscally responsible, in my opinion, and a great investment. And then, not to be cheesy, but I think investing in kids in general is the right thing to do. Um, we talk about how it takes a village to raise a family. For people like me who don't have family in the area, childcare is our village. My kids love their teachers. They love their daycare teachers. They love their friends at school. They're excited to go. And so I think that's a really important thing to allow families to pursue careers, continue getting dollars back into our community and our economy, and then just giving kids the opportunity to build those social skills and start a really strong education from the very beginning.
Housing prices in suburban communities continue rising. What solutions would you pursue to keep District 24 accessible for middle class families?
Yeah. SB1 was not the right way. So I definitely think we need to look at some new tax reform and incentives. I personally know a lot of people who want to downsize and sell their family home, but they can't because if they do, their rates increase and they're ultimately paying more money or the same for a much smaller home. And nobody really wants to do that, right? Moving's kind of a pain. But then as a result, right, we don't have those family homes available. So I would love to see incentives or tax breaks for veterans, for retirees, for people on fixed incomes, so that they can move into smaller homes that are maybe more appropriate for where they are in their season of life, and then open up those family homes for new families to come into the district, come into the state, and again, pay the taxes, grow here, have their children go to school here, and become part of our community. So I think we really need to look at that type of tax reform. I know the House Democrats are also pursuing some first time homebuyer grants. That's some legislation they're supporting right now. And I love that idea as well. Because buying a home is really hard. And I think the average age of a first time home buyer in Indiana is 40 at this point. And I know that I wanted to buy a house before I was 40. So I think that we need to make it more accessible, different types of housing. Like I said, workforce housing, I think, is really important so that people graduating who want to come here, start their careers, maybe work in Indy, but live in the suburbs, have those opportunities to do that.
You've emphasized environmental sustainability. What practical steps can the State House take that also respect local economic growth?
Yeah, outside stuff and being outside the outdoors is really important to me and my family. I think a really easy thing to do is incentivize corporations to build on vacant lots that already exist, and use the roads and sewers and things, the infrastructure that's already built. And then I'd love to look at the idea of setting a percentage of a town or community that would need to remain green spaced or untouched or available. I have, like I said, two small children, and we love being outside. And I think it's so important to make sure that we have those spaces available, especially as we become a more and more technology reliant world. We need to have those spaces available for people in general, but really like young people, to encourage them to go out, to have them have things that entice them to be outside. And then obviously the rural, agriculture side is a huge part of Indiana's heritage. And I don't come from that world of agriculture, but I do love to eat, and food comes from farms. So they're very important to me too. So I think it's just going to be really important to monitor that and find ways to protect those spaces so they're just not building on everything all the time.
Small businesses are central to Sheridan and Westfield's local economy. How would you support entrepreneurs without increasing regulatory burden?
Yeah. So I think right now there's a bill going through House Bill 1001, and it is not perfect by any means, but there's a couple things in there that stood out to me that I really liked. And one of those was allowing small scale businesses to proceed with building if they meet some like preset standards. And I think that would speed up the process much more quickly for businesses to get up and running and reduce the fees and cost of evaluations and things like that. So I like that idea. And I think also there is a business personal property tax on the table, which would reduce the work for small business owners so that they don't have to file paperwork and file taxes on every, computer, desk, tool, table, everything if they are below a certain, kind of net income level. So I think just little ways like that where we can put a little bit of, regulation monitoring in place, but really give um, give those businesses the opportunity to flourish. I think small businesses are so, so important to our communities, and just to have that diversity of businesses and support local community members.
Healthcare access and cost remain major concerns statewide. What reforms would you prioritize for Hoosier families in suburban districts like this one?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is prioritizing legislation that prohibits medical debt from impacting credit scores. Indiana's medical debt is around like $2 billion, and that is a massive impact on where people can use their dollars. If every dollar is going to pay back this massive medical bills, then they can't shop in our local economies. They can't buy a home. They can't use their dollars to reinvest. So I'd love to see some legislation around that. And I'd also like to make sure that there is caps on wage garnishment for medical bills. I don't think a lot of people realize that so many of us are just like one big medical bill away from homelessness or not being able to afford your basic things. I know when I had my children, pre-insurance, it was like over $30,000. I don't have $60,000 to have children, but I want to have a family. So how can we look at stuff like that, and make sure that if people have medical debt, it's not affecting their credit, and that it is that we are putting caps on wage garnishment so that people can still pay their rent, buy groceries, like live their life while unfortunately paying that debt.
District 24 voters often describe themselves as fiscally cautious but socially pragmatic. How would you represent that balance in legislative decision making?
Yeah. So I am all about using my time and my money in a way that is effective and efficient. And I would do the same in the state house. I think one thing that voters forget, and sometimes our representatives forget, is that we pay them. The dollars that they're using are our tax dollars. They work for us. And so that's something that's really important to me. And I take that responsibility really seriously. I know people really, work really hard for their money. And I do think that House District 24 is interesting in that our community members understand that some investment, aka taxes, are required to maintain our schools and roads and et cetera in the community that we like. But they want to see their dollars used to invest back in our communities, not fight culture wars just to say that we did. Um, you know, Today we have Republican legislators working on firing squads and laminated pieces of paper in classrooms. And that's not helping anybody. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of my tax dollars. And so I want to make sure that my message is always about reinvesting dollars and using taxpayer dollars in a way that's really efficient and really effective, because I know how hard people work for their money. And I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time and I'm not wasting their money.
If elected as a Democrat in a Republican led legislature, what is your strategy for actually passing legislation that benefits your district?
Yeah. My number one priority is focusing on legislation that actually improves the lives of Hoosiers, which should absolutely be a nonpartisan issue, right? Like I said, we have legislators voting on firing squads and things like that. That's not helping anybody. Honestly, it's kind of traumatizing, to be honest, for whoever has to have that job. Thankfully, it failed. That's a waste of time. That's not going to improve anyone's life. It's not making groceries more affordable. It's not making childcare more accessible. So I'm really focused on making lives better for Hoosiers, which should be something that we're all, and if you're a representative, that's what should be important to you. I love talking to people. I love building relationships and finding ways to connect with people. And I think that I can do that in the state house. Then, in full transparency, as a former Republican, I do feel like there's a little bit of translation ability that I have, to connect and talk about things in a way that brings it to, what we're all trying to achieve at the end of the day. So I think that experience and background, and still having, you know, conservative family members, I'm able to talk about things in a way that can appeal, and can also kind of appeal to conservative minds, even though they may be progressive policies, which we know across the board, progressive policies are popular when they're not attached to a party. So how can I like bring it down to the basics, connect with other people? That's what I love to do. And so that's what I plan to do in the state house as well.
Why you? Why now?
I think, to be honest, I was a frustrated constituent. I was tired of not being heard. And I was tired of the Republican supermajority doing whatever they want because they can. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's right. I think it's time to have representatives who not only listen to their constituents, but are also active members of their communities. I have yet to see my opponent in community events anywhere throughout the district. And that's frustrating to me because you serve our neighbors and you're not talking to them. So I also just love being a part of our community. Like I said, my husband and I moved here because we love the area. Our girls are now, born and raised here. We want them to be proud to be from here. And I think in working on campaigns over the past 4 years or so, and just kind of generally talking with people in general, people just want to be heard. And I don't think we're seeing that a lot right now. My passion is serving others and making life better for the people around me. I have a degree in hospitality because I love serving other people. I love it. I've done a lot of volunteer work, like you said, because I enjoy that. And a lot of reason why I decided to run for office is because while I loved volunteering with the Indiana Diaper Bank, which I still do on a regular basis, I don't want the Indiana Diaper Bank to exist. And so I had a light bulb moment of I love doing this work. I love being in the nonprofit space, but how can I get to the root of the problem? And the only way to get to the root of the problem is through legislation. And so I think that I can take what I have learned in my career, in my personal life, what I've learned in just talking to other people, and then I can get to the state house and make life better for people in Indiana. I'm an experienced problem solver. And like I said, as a former Republican, I feel like I can connect across the aisle and find ways that we can win for everybody in Indiana. And so that's what I really hope to do. I hold myself, similar to your podcast, very accountable to the people that I serve. I'm that person at work or within my friend group that knows if Rachel's got it, you're good. You don't have to worry about it. And that's what I want to assure voters in the area that you can count on me for that. And that I take the role really serious. I understand that by asking people to vote for me, I'm asking them to let me make really important decisions for their lives, and that's really serious to me, and not something that I take very lighthearted. So yeah, if people want someone who's going to work really, really hard and be accountable to our neighbors and our constituents, then I'm your gal.
Rachel, we've talked about vision, policy, and what's at stake for District 24. But now it's time for the part of the show where answers get shorter and the choices get clearer. No speeches, no talking points, just instinct. This is hold 'em or fold 'em. I'll give you a statement. If you agree, you hold 'em. If you don't, you fold 'em. And if you need a sentence to explain, keep it tight. Ready?
I'm ready.
Let's play. The state should invest in affordable childcare and early education.
Hold on.
Legalizing marijuana in Indiana would bring economic and criminal justice benefits.
Hold them in like, yes, I would like the economic aspects.
Environmental sustainability and economic growth can move forward together.
Hold them.
Property tax relief should prioritize homeowners over large corporate incentives.
Hold them.
The legislature should expand mental health funding statewide.
Hold them.
Bipartisanship only matters if it produces real policy results.
Hold them, I think. We want to work together.
Local governments should retain strong control over zoning and development decisions.
Hold them.
Healthcare access should be treated as a basic responsibility of the government.
Hold them. I think it's part of infrastructure. Healthcare is a part of infrastructure.
Your first loyalty as a legislator should always be to the district voters over party leadership.
Hold them.
Rachel, thank you for being here tonight, for stepping into the conversation, answering difficult questions, and choosing to run for public office at a time when that decision demands real courage. Running for the state house means more than campaigning. It means standing in front of your neighbors and saying, I am willing to be accountable. And in a district growing as quickly as this one, where families are bouncing opportunity, affordability, education, and community identity, those conversations matter more than ever. Whether voters ultimately choose you or someone else, democracy is stronger when people step forward to serve and when communities engage in honest debate about their future. So, Rachel, thank you for bringing your voice, your story, and your commitment to District 24 to this table tonight. We appreciate you for being here. And to everyone watching at home, the future of Indiana won't be decided by headlines or party labels. It will be decided by engaged citizens, informed voters, and communities willing to stay part of the conversation. Because democracy isn't something we watch, it's something we do. So stay informed, ask questions, and as always, hold them accountable.